Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat. Welcome back to the show. This is the place where the lies are for the litter box and the truth gets tuna. I'm your host, Conservative Cat. Today we are exposing the rotten kibble of Illinois politics again, where your billionaire emperor, Governor J.B. Pritzker, he is playing with taxpayer dollars, and taxpayers are stuck cleaning up his mess and the elitist mess, your assemblyman. So today we are going to be taking a hard swipe at Governor J.B. Pritzker, that fat cat Pritzker, and we're going to be taking a look at food stamps. Okay, so here's the scoop, my friends. Under these new changes, these federal changes to the food stamp program through the BBB, there's a provision in there that says, hey, states that have a bad error rate, a SNAP error rate, they're going to have to pay that back to the federal government. It's an accountability measure, okay? Illinois could be on the hook for up to $800 million in new costs. Yep, you heard that correctly. $700 million would actually fund SNAP. And then the other $100 million is to administer the changes. So who's going to pay for all of that? Ding, ding, ding. You guessed it. The taxpayer. You're going to pay for all of that. And there's a way to avoid all of that. We could pay something like $400 million, something like that, $500 million, if we were to just bring down that error rate to a level that most other states are at. We have a SNAP error rate of 11.56%. And just to put that in perspective, there are only that's higher than 38 other states. We're one of the highest SNAP error rates in the nation. Some of the highest SNAP error rates in the nation. There's only 11 other states outside of Illinois that have something higher than that, than the 11.56%. So food stamps for all, accountability for no one. Accountability for none. Pritzker's snap trap is going to be exposed right here on Conservative Cat. And plus, I want to talk about this $1 billion. I don't even know how much it's going to cost. It's already costing way too much. This expressway, which I'm sure isn't going to be completed for, if not decades, 100 years. Okay. This is going to take a very long time if they wind up completing it. I think that it's just sinking a bunch of taxpayer dollars into this project. You know, it's the same thing over and over again. They sink billions of dollars, millions of dollars into studying a project, and then billions of dollars constructing that project, but construction rarely ever happens. So this is, I have no idea how much it's going to wind up costing. I've seen some projections where it's going to be like 10 million per mile. And it's supposed to be 70 miles, this Southwest Connector Expressway. This is supposed to connect rural southern towns to St. Louis. Farmers, of course, are fearing land seizures because we know that IDOT is notorious for that. They've done it with other projects. Pritzker is pushing this connector, and this is a connector, really, I think, that is going to lead to nowhere other than the taxpayers paying all kinds of money. They're already $6 million in the hole on this thing to study it. Okay, to study if we need it or not. It just doesn't. I feel like you should conduct the study without taxpayer dollars, right? Instruct the agencies to do this. What are we paying them for? Right, and then collect feedback, see if people even really freaking want this thing, and go from there. But instead, we sunk $6 million of taxpayer funds into this study to see, you know, how best to go about this project. It's just a nightmare. So we're going to chat a little bit about that. There is also a Bombshell study. So this is going to be fascinating and something you definitely want to stay tuned in for. Nobody's really talking about this study. You're going to have a lot of state representatives coming out and saying that homelessness is due to a housing crisis or a lack of housing, and those dirty capitalists, how could they? They don't want multifamily housing, and those dirty scumbag Republicans, right? They'll say that the housing crisis is our fault. But really, this study shows the true reason behind the surge in homelessness. And it's not what Dems constantly tell you, which is, oh, we have a housing crisis. That is a complete lie when you look at this study and the numbers. So we're going to break it all down. Like I said, we're going after J.B. Pritzker, that fat cat, Illinois' billionaire babysitter of big government. And he thinks your wallet is a piggy bank. So like I said, here's the scoop. $800 million in new costs for Illinois, that we could be on the hook for that if we don't straighten up our act when it comes to the SNAP error rate. What is the SNAP error rate? That means we're giving SNAP benefits to people who don't earn or shouldn't be getting them, don't qualify, aren't eligible for SNAP benefits. A large amount, so the 11 out of the 11.56, I think it's like 10.06% of that is overpayment. So it's not like we're underpaying people on SNAP benefits. It's more like we're overpaying people on SNAP benefits. So that's our mistake here in the state of Illinois. And who's going to pay for that? You guessed it. Let's take a look at this clip. This is Governor J.B. Pritzker, of course, slamming the new SNAP rules. The new SNAP rules are something that was worked in, I believe, to the BBB, but it's a new federal provision. So these new SNAP rules really aren't controversial. All it really is saying is, hey, you got to take accountability in your state. You can't be doing these overpayments. Let's take a look. Here we go.
To root out, they say they're trying to root out fraud and abuse, right? That's what they say. But it's a blatant attempt to make it harder for people to feed their families. And you know why they want to do that? Because they couldn't be cruel, could they? But let's assume they're not cruel. You know what they're trying to do? They're trying to take money away from this program and truly, not trying, they just did it, and give huge tax cuts to the wealthiest people in this country. Honestly, taking things away from people who need it and giving it to people who don't need it, that doesn't seem right to me. Does it seem right to you?
The federal government is correctly telling the state of Illinois, clean up your SNAP program, be more accountable, hold your people accountable, hold your residents accountable. And Governor Pritzker, has the gall to tell people that this is a tax cut for the rich.
Do you have time? I mean, you may be holding down a job and you may have 3 kids and you may not be able to go back and forth home to this office where you've got to present these things. So you may just decide, I can't do it anymore. And the more burden we put on the poorest people in our state, the harder it is for us to deliver for them because the federal government has put up these barriers.
Republicans are just asking for accountability. Republicans are saying if you want to get a subsidy from the taxpayers, if you want grandma and grandpa and Aunt Ethel to pay for your food stamps, and you have the ability as a 25-year-old to work, get off your butt and work. I don't think that's controversial. Why are we asking people on fixed incomes to subsidize people that are able-bodied with no dependents? Why are we asking them to do something? Volunteer, do something. That's only controversial up until the last couple of years.
All of these changes, which are purposely bureaucratic and burdensome, will add additional cost and administrative complexity to the state, both in systems and staffing, for an overall cost to the state of $800 million every year. That end result could ultimately be a reduction in programs that most help the people we serve.
We can stop funding illegal immigrants. That'd be a good place to start. We can always look at waste, fraud, and abuse.
Okay, so I'm glad that we got that out of the way. So imagine this. You're clocking in probably right about now, 6:22 a.m., and your government is busy sending benefits to people who refuse to work, not can't work, but won't work. Okay, State Representative Andrew Chesney, you heard him in that Center Square clip. One of the few sane voices left in Springfield, to be perfectly honest with you. He says, if you want grandma and grandpa and Aunt Ethel to pay for your food stamps, then you've got to be an able-bodied, and you're an able-bodied 25-year-old and you want all of these people on fixed incomes a lot of the time to pay for your food stamps, and you're an able-bodied 25-year-old, what the hell's wrong with you? Get off your butt and go to work. And that's all the federal government did really with the BBB. It was just setting work requirements for able-bodied people without dependents. So that's not very controversial. Only if you're a professional victim, okay, in Chicago or one of these liberal cities in Illinois, or you're a career activist in the governor's mansion or in Springfield, is this going to affect you? Okay, so the only people that this really affects are people who don't work really, and they are career activists, they're keyboard warriors, or they're just professional victims. And that's the only types of people who are going to be affected really by the work requirement. Now, let's talk about Governor J.B. Pritzker and what he has chose to fund instead. Okay, so he's not going to give that up lightly. Now, this is a federal statute, so I don't know how he's going to get around this, where he has to pay if that error rate exceeds 8 to 10%. Okay, so we fall outside of that currently. It was 11.56% in fiscal year 2024. We're on track to fall outside of the 8 to 10%. If we fall within the 8 to 10%, we only have to pay like half of the $800 million. Okay. He's not going to give that up without a fight, but what he did fund was free healthcare for illegal immigrants, hundreds of millions of dollars a year, billions. So we subsidized housing and services, legal aid services for non-citizens. And let's not forget the state-funded diversity czars and the consultants, the DEI consultants, the climate councils. We funded all of those, and those types of people, the DEI the DEI directors, the diversity czars and the climate councils, they didn't fix any potholes or bring anything meaningful to the table, but all of your taxpayer dollars went to go pay those people. Okay, so that's what Pritzker has chose to fund. Now he's going to, be stingy with the funds when it comes to paying for your SNAP errors and paying back the federal government when it comes to your SNAP errors. So Chesney, he hit another bullseye here with this line. He said, we could stop funding illegal immigrants. That would be a great place to start. Bingo. That is, it's not about compassion. Okay, funding illegal immigrants, it's about power, it's about dependency. They want to bloat the voter rolls. They want to buy loyalty with your money, with your tax dollars. So here's what Pritzker doesn't want you to know. According to the USDA, Illinois has an 11.56 SNAP error rate. This is pretty high. And like I said, of that, a lot of that is just overpayments, not underpayments. So it'd be one thing if we were shorting people, which isn't good anyway. But we're not really shorting people. We're overpaying, okay, which is way higher than the national average. Our overpayment rate is 10.64%. The federal government has said enough is enough. We want this state and other states to clean up their act. There are only 11 other states outside of Illinois who have a higher rate than us, higher error rate, and 38 other states are doing better, I think is the statistic. Yeah. Than Illinois. Okay. So, yeah, we need to get better. The state needs to clean up its act. We need to be more accountable. We need to tighten this leash. We need to get our overpayments under control. How does Governor J.B. Pritzker respond? He says, this is a tax cut for the rich. Okay. So, folks, I've heard some really dumb things in politics over the years, but pretending that making food stamp programs accountable is a tax cut for the rich is like saying declawing your cat is an assault on free speech. It's just complete and utter nonsense, and it's insulting. We know that making food stamp programs more accountable, making sure eligible people who are supposed to be on it are on it. We know that that's not a tax cut for the rich. Okay, this is just insulting. So here comes the left's new outrage. The USDA wants states to turn over their info about SNAP recipients, okay, to prevent fraud, waste, and abuse. So this is part of the federal government doing their job. This is what our tax dollars pay for at the USDA. They're going to pour over this info of people, recipients, who are on the rolls or on SNAP benefits, and they're going to make sure that they're supposed to be getting those SNAP benefits, okay? So on top of saying, hey, states, you have to make sure that you are keeping that error rate low. You have to make sure that you're not overpaying individuals on these SNAP benefits. On top of that, they want a list of the recipients so they can do their due diligence and make sure they're being held accountable as well. And they're going to double check, make sure that they're making a list, they're checking it twice, right? Make sure everybody who gets the benefits are supposed to be getting them, which is like what we would want from the federal government, especially if they're asking the state to do the same thing. They should be doing it themselves. So it seems like common sense to me, right? But not to Attorney General Kwame Raoul, who announced that he's joining 22 other states to fight that, to fight the USDA for really just trying to hold this program accountable. They're going to be suing the USDA because they don't like that they have to give over their information of people on SNAP benefits. So just let that sink in for a second. Illinois has some of the highest error rates in the nation. Instead of fixing it, you've got leaders who are throwing tantrums, filing lawsuits, and they are protecting, till they're blue in the face, they are protecting dysfunction. Why? Because waste is a feature, okay? It's a fraud is the fertilizer of the political machine. They don't want to get rid of the fraud. They don't want to get rid of the waste because that's what keeps the political machine going. They're afraid of exposing the people who are profiting off of this waste and abuse. Really what's going on is you've got people who are profiting in this program off of the waste and abuse, people who should be fired, people who should be let go, who have these jobs, who are issuing these overpayments. Really what they're doing, they're buying votes with your taxpayer dollars. They're buying loyalty with your taxpayer dollars. So this isn't really a mistake. It's all by design. It's to create chaos, and out of the chaos, they can do malicious things and ill intent type things with your tax dollars, which is to buy loyalty, buy votes, things like that. The subsidized poor is their voter base. And they're afraid of losing those people as their voter base. And they have been profiting in the form of power off of this for quite some time, and they don't want to lose that power. Okay, so that's what's going on. They are fighting this and protecting this dysfunction within the program till they're blue in the face. They are fighting it so vehemently because they need it for the political machine to function. Fraud is the fertilizer for the political machine. So if we had real leadership in Springfield, here's what would happen. We would have an audit of the SNAP system from top to bottom. We would cut all state benefits to non-citizens, naturally, because they're illegal. We would implement these strong work requirements that Trump, the federal government, has created through the BBB. And then we would prosecute fraud. So if you are committing fraud or selling your SNAP cards, which I know people who've done that here in the state of Illinois, a lot of people abuse the system. They should be prosecuted for fraud. They should be found out and prosecuted for fraud because that's a crime. It's a crime to steal taxpayer dollars, to exploit this system, and they should be prosecuted for fraud. They shouldn't continue to get those benefits just because the Democrats want to buy their loyalty and buy their votes, okay? Instead, we have Governor J.B. Pritzker, a man so out of touch with the everyday people. He thinks that welfare reform is oppression. Okay, this is not oppression. And he says that tax cuts through the BBB, there were all kinds of it, makes permanent the 2017 Trump tax cuts. He thinks that tax cuts are theft because they are to them. Okay, they are to the elitists. Tax cuts are definitely theft in their eyes because they're the ones who are lining their pockets with the dollars that you're earning in the private sector. So the public sector people, of course, view tax cuts as theft because look at Doge. They fired a bunch of people and they were all upset about it. They were like, oh, I lost my job. How could I have lost my job? Well, I'll tell you how. Okay, it wasn't needed and it was a waste. And you're in the public sector. Why don't you go to the private sector and make something, create a product or a service that somebody actually wants and participate in this little thing we call the free market capitalism, okay? But these people don't want to participate in that system. So they view tax cuts as theft because it really does threaten their way of life. So he's a billionaire who wants to manage your life while evading responsibilities for his own state's failures. The people who are administering this, which would be the DHS, and you saw there in the clip the person who's in charge of the Illinois DHS, the Department of Human Services. You saw the blue hair, right? These are diversity hires. These aren't people who actually are, what would I say, excellent, okay, at their job. They're not pursuing excellence. They're there because they're diversity hires, because they have blue hair, and that's it. So it shouldn't shock us when we see the person who's running the DHS looks very unserious. You know, I mean, I'm not a judgmental person, okay, but when you're in a position and you're running a state agency, a huge state agency that does a lot of things, the DHS does a lot, you should probably not have blue hair and a nose ring or glasses that look ridiculous, right? Present yourself professionally. I mean, is this too hard to ask? You're running an entire department, a state agency, one of the biggest ones, one of the most important ones. I think, you know, it's evident if we have somebody who is that incompetent and that unqualified running that state agency, maybe we don't need that state agency, I guess, but they do facilitate things like DCFS. This is a really big part of the state and a part of government operations. They issue civil rights, or they deal with civil rights complaints. So there's a lot that the IDHS does. And one of those very important jobs that they've been tasked with is the SNAP benefits, and they can't get that right. So it's all top down. People need to be fired. If there is an error rate that is this high, people are failing, and when people fail, you need to fire people. Okay, so let's wrap this up. Folks, the SNAP issue is just one tentacle of a much bigger beast. And this is about federalism, fiscal sanity, and freedom. The state of Illinois thinks that they are outside of the federal government and that they can operate outside of the federal government, which, newsflash, we are the United States of America. Kwame Raoul and these 22 other states who think that they don't have to be held accountable, and they're avoiding government accountability, and they're avoiding accountability to the people who fund their lives, you, the taxpayer. They think that they are outside of the federal government and that they don't have to play by the rules. Newsflash, you do. And you do have to meet the requirements that the federal government has when it comes to these error rates. Pritzker wants your government to be your God, your grocery store, your guidance counselor. That's what he wants government to be. And here on the Conservative Cat Show, we believe in something higher: personal responsibility, Christian charity, okay, not dependency on the government, okay? And I say that, the SNAP program is really an anti-Christian. A lot of these programs are just anti-Christian. The church should be fulfilling the need. If there's somebody in your community who is not able to afford food, there's a food pantry on every single corner, even in these rural communities. Okay, there's a food pantry. There's like six churches like within a stretch of mile here in Lincoln, Illinois, and every single church has a food pantry day at least once a week. So that's like 6 days a week. You could go get groceries or go get food from a food pantry through one of these churches in my community. And I think a lot of communities are like that, but unfortunately, we have not emphasized as Christians that this is the way and you should go when you're on hard times. When you're dealing with hard times, you should lean on your Christian brothers and sisters, not on the government. And I think that we have to do better as Christians communicating that and saying, hey, personal responsibility, community responsibility. We're going to take responsibility for Becky, who's having a hard time getting groceries this week for her kids. We're going to make sure that her kids are fed, and we're hosting a food pantry, right? I think that a lot of these churches have to do better at saying, hey, it's us that you should be dependent on, and it's really yourself, and it's personal responsibility you should be dependent on, not the government. And like Chesney said, if you're 25, able-bodied, and you're suckling off the taxpayer teat, what's wrong with you? Go back to work. Get to work. Get off your butt. All right, I do have to take a quick break. We are going to get to this is really a fascinating story. It's very involved, so it's going to take a lot of time to kind of unpack. But there's this thing, it's called the Southwest Connector, which is 70 miles long. It's a big stretch of highway, essentially, and it's supposed to connect rural southern towns to St. Louis. Okay, so we're going to be peeling back the layers of concrete corruption on this project the state is calling Southwest Connector. The Illinois Department of Transportation is, of course, selling this as progress. Dick Durbin has tried to sell this as progress. Unfortunately, I know how IDOT projects go. For decades, they will go untouched. There will be a ton of taxpayer cash funneled into this project before there's even a jackhammer that hits the ground. Okay. And it feels more like a land grab. And there is a real fear out there that this Southwest Connector could lead to eminent domain land grabs and eminent domain confiscation of private property, because let's face it, folks, this happens all of the time. So let me take a quick break. I'll be right back. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends. Hey, you're listening to the Conservative Cat Clips. This is the place where we don't call 911 first. Nope, we pray, we prepare, and yes, we pack heat. Every time there's a tragedy, the media and the Democrats, they start crying, do something, and do something. And what they mean is more laws, more bans, and more restrictions, not on criminals, mind you, but on law-abiding citizens. So let me tell you what evil doesn't care about. They don't care about legislation. The man willing to break the sixth commandment, thou shalt not murder, doesn't blink twice at your AR-15 ban. Okay, he doesn't read your gun-free zone signs. He sees those signs and he says, this is an invitation for me. Gun control doesn't stop evil. It disarms good people. The founding fathers didn't give us the Second Amendment so we could go hunting. They gave us the Second Amendment to protect ourselves against tyrants, both foreign and domestic. And newsflash, tyrants don't tend to announce themselves. They come wearing smiles and waving around fancy policies. And I also want to talk about self-defense today. Self-defense. The average police response time in big cities like Chicago could be up to 10 minutes, sometimes even longer. I know the Chicago PD is really struggling with that. Response times in rural areas, it could get up to even 30 minutes response time. So if somebody kicks down your door, are you going to ask them to wait until the government sends backup to protect you, or are you going to protect your family and take matters into your own hands? So grandma, okay, in Peoria, Illinois, she is just trying to defend her property, but yet she's the one treated like a criminal. She has to go through all kinds of crazy background checks, permits, training. And the thug in Chicago, he gets the gun out of his trunk in an alley, and he didn't think twice about our laws, okay? It's about power. It always has been. Every dictatorship in history has disarmed their citizens first. First, that's Stalin, that's Hitler, that's Mao. They didn't want competition. And once the guns were gone, so were the rights, the freedom, and the people. So a disarmed people is a controlled people. But an armed, faithful, and free people, that is a nightmare for tyrants. And really, it's a blessing to your neighbors if you are armed. The Second Amendment isn't outdated. It's eternal. And just like evil, just like our right, just like the evil has the right to do evil things, and that they will, we have the right to resist evil and to arm ourselves. And the Second Amendment is pretty dang clear, shall not be infringed. This has been Conservative Cat Clips. Hey, go ahead and smash that like button, share this out with your friends. I appreciate you being here. Subscribe to the channel. Folks, let's talk about concrete and corruption. This is the Southwest Connector Project. Now, I sat down with Dylan Vancil, but I'm going to kind of quarterback this interview that I did with him. Dylan Vancil is running in the Illinois 17th. He's the only Republican running against Eric Sorensen. Eric Sorensen has a primary challenger, which is interesting. But Eric Sorensen is in the 17th Congressional District. It includes parts of Rockford, Peoria, Bloomington. Now, we sat down and talked about this. Now, I want to make sure I clarify a few things because I got a lot of my numbers mixed up in this interview. So I want to make sure I clarify some of the numbers. The Illinois Department of Transportation is moving full steam ahead with this new expressway project. Okay, so they are already, it was like $6 million, $3 million worth of federal funds, $3 million worth of state funds, taxpayer dollars going to just study this thing. Okay, what bothers me the most about these types of projects is they don't find out if it's needed before spending money on it. They do a study on it. They do all kinds of studies, and it usually costs millions upon millions of dollars. And once you sink those millions upon millions of dollars into the study, it's kind of hard to say like, oh, well, we're not going to do it anymore, right? So they're calling it the Southwest Connector. And I know it sounds nice. It probably even sounds like patriotic, you know, and you're like, oh, and maybe it is. Maybe it will wind up being a really great thing. But here's what I know about Illinois. Branding, bureaucratic buzzwords, it's something that should raise every taxpayer's eyebrow when you hear something like this, and the branding and the pushing of this. And it should raise your blood pressure as a landowner anytime you hear that the Illinois Department of Transportation has a project underway. $6 million taxpayer-funded study is underway. The goal to plan improvements along Route 3, Route 3, 154, 13, 127. Okay, so I'm not super familiar with the west or the southwest area in this east or this St. Louis area, but I took a look at the map and it's 70 miles. It's going to connect a lot of these southern rural towns to the St. Louis area. Okay, so it's a stretch of highway. In other words, there's going to be a lot of government, a lot of construction, and probably a lot of eminent domain. Now, I talked with Dylan Vancil in the 17th. That is nowhere near, you're correct, the Southwest Connector. But Dylan Vancil, he's kind of got an interesting take here because he's been very involved in his own community when it comes to the Highway 34. Now, Highway 34 has been deemed as one of the deadliest highways in Illinois. And they've been pushing for decades at this point to get that highway to be a 4-lane highway, okay? Highway 34. And this is more towards up north, I think towards the Rockford area. Punish me in the comments if I'm not correct on that. I looked at it all on a map yesterday, but so I have no idea how much this Southwest Connector is going to cost, the 70-mile thing. I've heard estimates like 10 million per mile. So that would be kind of insane. That's a lot. So it'd be pretty expensive project, obviously. Now, here's the kicker. They're saying that this is all being done in the name of economic development, getting these rural towns connected to a big town. Okay. And of course, Senator Dick Durbin, he's, waving the federal funding flag. He's was praising. So this is all stemming from, and like I said, this is a very involved story. This all stems from the infrastructure bill, the bipartisan infrastructure bill. We know that was under Joe Biden. And at the time in 2023, when, they had done this infrastructure bill, they had the Southwest Connector in mind, that they were going to secure funds for this project through the bipartisan infrastructure bill, the 2021 infrastructure bill. Now that Donald Trump is in there, I don't know if they're going to wind up securing those federal funds for this thing. At the time, Dick Durbin called this the second coming of the Eisenhower highway system. This is nowhere near the Eisenhower highway system. It is not as fantastical as that. And I am all about infrastructure, but I know Illinois. I know that it's just going to be a bunch of bureaucratic BS, okay? And that this is probably never going to get finished, and people are going to be raking in the taxpayer cash. So not everyone is clapping. I did talk with Dylan Vancil, and before we get into it, there are a few things I want to clarify. And I'll clarify it as we go throughout this interview. I'm going to play it for you. It's pre-recorded. I totally messed up my numbers, so punish me in the comments for that. But I will jump in and correct myself when I'm doing this interview, as I play this interview. Also championing this project. Yes, Mike Boss is championing this project because let's not forget, you're going to have Republicans who champion this project because a lot of people have a lot of money to make, and their communities have a lot of money to make. I mean, I will say that this is probably going to provide some jobs. The construction of this thing, if it ever happens, even before it happens, you're creating jobs with people who have to conduct these studies and these surveys to collect feedback. Like, of course, you're going to have politicians out there championing this thing. And I mean, maybe it will be a good thing. But my problem with it at this point is we're dumping all kinds of taxpayer dollars into this to study this. And do the people really want it? They haven't even collected the feedback, but they've dumped $6 million into a study to decide what kind of improvements they want to make to these various routes included in the Southwest Connector. And that's my whole rub with this. It's just like, why do we do this all of the time? Let's get the feedback. Let's see if this is really needed and if the people really want it. And we really need to have a conversation about eminent domain, because I highly doubt that this project is not going to trigger some sort of eminent domain. So let's take a listen to this. This is an interview, and like I said, I will be chiming in just to correct myself on a few things, because we talk about multiple projects here. We talk about the Southwest Connector, but we also bring it back to the Illinois Highway 34, one of the deadliest two-lane highway stretches. The locals have been begging for the state to fix this for decades. Instead of fixing this and keeping our priorities in line, we're already dreaming up new projects, okay? And we haven't been able, IDOT hasn't been able to expand this road, this highway, this stretch of highway. This is in West Central Illinois, Highway 34. They haven't been able to do that. What makes them think they can take on a 70-mile new project, new expressway that connects these rural towns to St. Louis? And then we also talk about this other one that's very controversial, and this was only just 2 miles of highway. Okay, this project, it was a connector in St. Clair County, and it's called the Illinois Connector 3. And it was like 2 miles, and it costed $80 million. Okay. And, I don't know how we justified that for 2 miles. We paid $80 million, and this is in phase 2. And again, this project hasn't even broken ground yet. So, and we took a family business via eminent domain for this project. So there's just a track record here of these IDOT projects, and there's not a good track record. Let's take a listen. Here we go, where we don't ask the government for any kind of permission to speak freely. Okay, we don't ask for permission. Today we are talking about dirt, not gossip, but literal dirt, land, the kind that your granddad cleared by hand, the kind that politicians in DC and Springfield want to carve up for either highways or these high voltage lines, whether you like it or not. So first up, we're going to be talking about the Southwest Connector. It's a $1 billion development dream that the Illinois Department of Transportation has, which I'm not totally against until they say, oh, it's going to connect rural counties to the Metro East. And by connect, they actually mean confiscate through eminent domain. Eminent domain is the name of the game, and your family farm might be in the crosshairs. So we're going to be talking about the Southwest Connector project. That's an IDOT project. But then there's also this Grain Belt Express, which is really fascinating. It was a 780-mile multi-state green energy project backed by Joe Biden and, of course, Governor J.B. Pritzker and a bunch of globalist investors. And these globalist investors and JB and Joe Biden, they, of course, didn't live anywhere near the land for where this was planned, this Grain Belt Express. But last week, the Trump Department of Energy, the Trump administration, they delivered a huge win for rural America. Mary Miller celebrated it on X. They pulled the plug on a $4.9 billion taxpayer funded loan, essentially, for this project. They pulled the plug on this for this climate solution. Okay. And really what this was, it was a transmission line to bring wind energy from Kansas to Illinois. It was ridiculous. So joining me here to break it all down, to chat with me about it, I'd imagine he's a strong advocate for property rights because he's running as a Republican.
Yes.
And, he's running for Congress in the Illinois 17th. And I think that he understands, he's got to understand if he's going to be the congressman in the 17th, soil and farmland, because that's really going to impact his district. So, Dylan, tell us a little bit about yourself before we jump into it. Tell us about Peace and how it's going and the campaign trail.
Things are going great. The support has been overwhelming here. Again, we launched back in February. I've just been pounding the pavement ever since. I'm working on over 23,000 miles on the campaign trail. We did reach our 6-figure mark for fundraising here at the end of second quarter. Yeah, things are going well. Just trying to get out. It's been, county fair month for the 17th congressional district. So been getting our fill in at the fairs. Yeah, everything's been going good. The support's been overwhelming, and Republicans all over the state of Illinois. I feel like the teamwork is really coming together, maybe like we haven't seen before. And Illinois is just tired. I mean, these guys, everybody's just tired of being taxed to death. So I think majority of people are waking up to that, and I mean, it's affecting all of our pocketbooks. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I wanted to have you on because it's not only just the taxation that I think has got people bothered, but this, I'm paying so much in property taxes. This stuff should be mine. You know what I mean? And I know that at a state level, a lot of politicians have introduced, elected officials have introduced legislation that would say, hey, after 30 years, you don't have to pay property taxes anymore. You finally live on your property. But nothing's really gotten anywhere. I think at a federal level, I really want to talk about a couple of things today. We'll first start with the Trump cancellation for that funding of the Grain Belt Express. This was a decision that was made, and I think that this was a win. Mary Miller called it a win on her X account for rural people. If you were a member of Congress, what do you think, this means for the rural counties that were going to be affected by that grain belt? And folks, just for background, this is a transmission line. I think it was supposed to bring like wind and energy or something from Kansas. It was a green energy project, which wasn't all that green. It was green for global investors, right? For people who didn't live there. So what do you think? What did this decision mean for people that you're going to potentially represent in the district? Or for rural Illinoisans?
Well, I call it a win. This green scam, it's atrocious. And what it's doing, it's just wasting our tax dollars. We have to get back to real energy solutions. Solar and wind is just not it. They have to be subsidized so heavily on the taxpayers' dollars to get it to work. It's just not, it's not favorable. We have to get back to our coal plants here in Illinois. We need to get those open back up. It's, traveling all over the district. I've met with several economic developers that would love to see a huge manufacturing facility come in, but we can't get the power to them because JB's went and shut down all our coal plants in Illinois. So we have to get back to energy independence, and wind and solar is not it. I mean, I was just talking to somebody the other day up in Rockford about this. All the wind and solar that they put in Illinois, has your electricity bill gotten any cheaper? Mine hasn't. I mean, my average utility bill or electric bill is about $350 a month. And I just had to make another mortgage payment on an electricity bill because it went to $625.
Insane.
I mean, it's insane. And we can't continue to keep paying for it.
Yeah. And I mean, the Trump administration doing this where they're cutting that federal funding. It's the $4.9 billion for this specific project. What do you think that this sends a message to these developers who are focused in on as wind and on solar? Do you think it sends a message to those global investors who were really pushing this, or even the politicians like JB or Joe Biden that were pushing this?
I do. I think it's a direct warning, or whichever to them. It's over. We're not going to keep taking away from the taxpayers to fund the Green New scam. It's not feasible. I think it's a win in our book, of course, and we have to get back to the real energy independence, efficient operations for that.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you think Congress would prevent like future projects like this from rammed through?
I do. I mean, Trump was pretty clear the other day in a press conference or whatever you want to call it. There should be no more wind turbines built or put up in America. It's taking away. I mean, you drive. I spent 5 years in South Dakota, beautiful territory. I mean, even here in Illinois, it's all cornfields and soybeans, but still the landscape is beautiful, and we're just taking away from that. It's not an efficient form of energy. It's a waste of money, and it's killing our landscape.
Yeah. Yep. And that kind of brings me right to this. Another project that's kind of seeking federal funding right now. I think it's going to be $1 billion in federal funds. This one might be a little bit more controversial. It's not a green weenie project or a green new scam project, as you like to call them. But it's the Southwest Connector. So IDOT says that this is going to bring opportunity. Critics say that they're going to bulldoze right over my front porch. You know, some of these business owners are concerned about the eminent domain that they're going to be potentially using to build this stretch of highway. So this is going to connect the like rural counties to the Metro East area. And this is just a stretch of highway, a big stretch of highway. So for those of you who haven't been following this project, the project cuts across rural parts of Illinois to connect that Metro East, and the state is now collecting feedback right now via survey. So do you think that that feedback will actually shape the outcome? Do you think that they're going to use that feedback at a state level? What do you think about, maybe infrastructure projects in Illinois, just in general? I feel like a lot of people are like, another highway that might not get done, and we're going to dump billions of dollars into it. And is it really going to be helpful? And on top of that, some of these farmers and business owners are concerned about the highway cutting right through their facilities in some cases. So as a congressman, one, do you believe that the feedback is actually going to result in a different outcome?
Well, so where I'm confused, and I don't know much about this connector. This is in the southern part of the state. But from the articles I read, is it only 1.8 miles worth of connector?
Yeah.
Or is there many more miles to that? Because I'm trying to figure out how in the world less than.
Okay, so I do want to clarify something here, folks. We're doing an interview with Dylan Vancil. He's the congressional candidate for the Illinois 17th. Just want to clarify the 1.8 miles. This was said to be a part of the Southwest Connector, but it's not. It is a totally separate project. This is currently in phase 2. So what do I mean by that? There is actually no construction being done on this right now, but it is further along than that much larger project, the Southwest Connector, the 1.8 miles. That is what's called the Illinois Connector 3. And this is also in southern Illinois, but it is a much smaller connector, and it's just in St. Clair County. And the shocking numbers here that we're going to get to, I called it $1 billion. It is not $1 billion. It is 80 million. Okay, 80 million is what they have allocated. It's fully funded for this Illinois Connector 3. They haven't broken ground on it quite yet, but it is in phase 2. So it is very much out of the studying phase that the Southwest Connector is in. But it's a great example because it goes to show you these types of projects and their impact, even something as small as 1.8 miles. This was also a connector to kind of streamline traffic, which is what the 70 miles does. It streamlines traffic, makes traffic lighter. It makes it to where these rural communities can have access to the Metro East to St. Louis. Is there an actual need for it? We don't know because they're collecting feedback right now to the tune of $6 million. Now, this was an $80 million project that we're going to talk about here. Let's pick up the interview. Here we go.
2 miles of highway is going to cost 80 million, or where is this $1 billion coming from?
Yeah, when I said it's going to be a stretch of highway, it's like I said that like an exact. It is 1.8. It's a stretch of highway, but it's a lot for, there is a facility specifically. I think it was a trucking type facility. I was reading some articles, and it's going to cut right through their facility there, and they're very anti that. But yeah, it's not really all that huge. It's only connecting some of these rural southern. And if you look on a map, and that is the Illinois Connector 3. So I want to make that there is a clear distinction between these two projects. Here we go. Illinois, some of these rural southern, at the very tip, counties to the Metro East. So it's yeah, I don't even know if it's really justified the $1 billion. Um,
I'm trying to figure out 2 miles for 80 million even. I mean, it's just rough. And I don't, you have a feasible business there. You know, that article this morning or that you had sent over. I mean, this family owned business employs around 100 people, good paying jobs. And this facility of theirs is brand new. They haven't even been in it a year. And they had knew about, possibly these plans coming up at some point in time, and it was just supposed to take a little corner of their property, but now they've rearranged it to where it's going right through the facility, and that can't happen. And I would
so most likely it's going to happen because this Illinois Connector 3 is already in phase 2. I'd imagine that eminent domain. So via eminent domain, they used this Illinois Connector 3 to cut through a family-owned trucking business. And we're pointing to this smaller project because if that's just 2 miles, imagine what 70 miles is going to do and what these land grabs, these land deals are going to manifest out of this 70-mile highway that they've got planned, the Southwest Connector. So this is a much smaller project, but you can see at that scale, I mean, that costed $80 million and it was 2 miles of highway there, or of a connector, and it costed $80 million. Could you imagine what 70 miles is going to be like? And can you imagine how many family-owned businesses or farmers are going to be impacted via eminent domain through this project? Let's take a listen further into our interview.
like to think with the community response and feedback that they would be willing to adjust some of that. And I get it. So I've been a part of the Highway 34 coalition for years. I live right on Highway 34, Warren County and Henderson. And from Monmouth, Illinois to Gulfport, Illinois is the deadliest stretch of highway in the state of Illinois. We have been asking for funding for a 4-lane for decades. They finally got it done around the high school or around the school here at West Central. There's too many fatalities. It was a major safety concern. So I get that part of it. And in the rural area here, it's not taking out any businesses. It is farm ground. But at the end of the day, this is the deadliest stretch of highway in the state of Illinois, and it's been ignored for too long. They have one phase of it funded, but the other phase is not, the west side. And, this is a similar deal. I don't believe in disrupting businesses and taking farm ground for a 1.8 mile connector to make it just a little bit easier. It seems like there's some other routes and alternatives that they can do.
Yeah, well, it's not really like what you're talking about, a safety thing. It seems more like an economic thing, like getting possibly farm equipment or product to point A to point B a little bit faster. Then it's 1.8 miles, so it's like it might just be a tad bit faster, and it streamlines just your time a little bit. So unlike what you're talking about, it seems like that's a priority. I mean, if it's truly that big a deal where there's a ton of fatalities, they would probably want to seek the $1 billion of funding at a federal level for that project rather than a connector. As congressmen, do you think that we should be holding states accountable, agencies accountable who are forcibly doing these kind of land sales? I think that this is becoming more popular. I was reading something out of New Jersey today. This family farm has gotten national headlines. People are concerned about eminent domain. And when in Congress, Dylan, are you going to be an advocate against eminent domain, or maybe funding projects that seem to be of a lower priority than other ones? How would you approach eminent domain as a congressman?
So I'm 100% for the safety aspect of it. This route here on Highway 34, something needs to be done with that. But this 1.8 stretch of highway here to make traffic flow a little quicker for 1.8 miles for $1 billion doesn't make sense to me. And it goes back to, like we were talking about earlier with our property taxes. At what point do we really own our property? If the state and federal government can just come in here and take it whenever they want, whenever they feel like it, I mean, it's
Yeah, and it's gone a
That's
long way
insane.
from, so eminent domain, a lot of people don't know that, hey, eminent domain is like, hey, we need this for national security. We need this for public safety. You know, I'd imagine that stretching that out to 4 lanes. Here's the statistical evidence of why it's so dangerous, why we need more lanes here. But like now it's starting to sound like, so even in New Jersey, the example, it was affordable housing. So more housing in this specific area. Now it seems like eminent domain, like there's an abuse going on where it's not like a need, and they don't even have to show, hey, here's the work that, or show our work. You know, here's the statistics of why we need it and why it's, you know, important. It used to be like a national security thing. You know, we need this rail for national security or something like that, or for power, energy. But see, the other one, the grain belt thing, that even makes a little bit more sense for via eminent domain because it's energy. But this one, it's like really just a convenience thing. And I'm like, you got to show your work, man.
It is. And yeah, it makes me wonder who's traffic flow, or, you know, does it speed up here? Who does it really help with this 1.8 miles? Because it's not helping the 100 employees that work for this family-owned business. You know, they don't want to have to relocate after all the time and money they've spent building this facility and this business, thinking they were going to be there, you know, for decades to come. And now they're saying it could cut their growth potential down to 5 years, and they'll have to relocate again.
Mm-hmm. Another aspect of this Southwest connector that I find fascinating, a lot of the supporters say that it's going to create jobs. So like I'd imagine the people who build the thing, right? These union contracts, you know, to build the connector, and it'll create jobs. Now, do we sacrifice private property rights, farmland, this facility? And this is all hypothetical if they get the grant, right? For temporary jobs, probably just to build the damn thing. You know, should these jobs, these temporary jobs, there are potentially these jobs that this would create, are those more important than those things? What do you think about that?
That shouldn't even be factored into it. This is a temporary deal. It'll take, well, it's rate Illinois goes, it'll probably be a 5-year project to get 2 miles done, especially for $1 billion. But you know, I just don't get it. I mean, we have so many other things we should be working on, impacting this family's business that's been there for so long with all the employees. Now, if there was a facility, and maybe I'll sound hypocritical for this, but if there was a facility coming in that was going to create 300 or 400 jobs and take up 10 acres of farm ground, I can, you know, the community impact for that is strong. And I understand that aspect of it. And I would think a lot of landowners would be willing to work with somebody on that. But at the end of the day, if they don't want to, find somewhere else to go. There's plenty of empty space around these highways to get something like that done. No, I don't think this 1.8 mile $1 billion connector is the right answer.
Final question. Well, and then I want to get to, you know, some of the things you've been hearing on the campaign trail. But my final question, when voters think about who's going to, you know, stand between them and a bulldozer, what sets you apart, you know, when it comes to eminent domain, private property rights, liberty, things like that, grassroots energy, what separates, or why should voters vote for you, really?
So I'm all for, I mean, a lot of these family farms have been here forever. And for somebody to just come in and take them out from under them without their say is just insanity to me. I am happy to stand with them and for them any way I can. You know, I'm sure for this connector project, there's probably 6 different routes they can take. And of course, they just want to go with whatever works best for the engineers that come up with this. But how about we go out and get the responses and the feedback from the community first? And that's what they've done here on the Highway 34 project. They've had quite a few forums and discussions before they laid out the final, 3 plans. Very little, community impact as in farm ground or housing or any of that. Nobody's having to relocate. But there's definitely different options out there, and I would be one to absolutely explore all of those options so we have the least amount of impact on people's personal property, their homes, businesses, things like that.
That Highway 34, where is that at?
So
From-
Monmouth, from Warren County and Henderson County, it's from Monmouth, Illinois to Gulfport, Illinois. It's about 30-mile stretch. It's entirely too narrow. It actually runs right in front of my house, winding roads, and like I said, it's the deadliest stretch of highway in Illinois.
Wow. And they haven't touched anything yet. No breaking
No.
ground, anything like that.
We have a 4-lane around the high school just because, unfortunately, we've had some bad fatalities right around the school. But that was a little 4 or 5 mile stretch. They've got a long ways to go yet.
Yeah. Well, Dylan, I don't want to take up too much of your time. Tell us a little bit more about you and why you're running for Congress.
Yeah, so I'm a business owner. I own several coffee shops here in West Central Illinois and Southeast Iowa.
Those are amazing.
I appreciate that. Yeah, we just actually finished up our franchise paperwork, so we're looking to expand even more. Hopefully, we'll be down in the Bloomington area sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
Also have a distribution company. We help control costs and help out over 40 other coffee shops on a weekly basis. I've been the vice president of my local school board until recently for the last 5 years. I did decide to step down as vice president just because we are all focused in on winning the 17th. As a business owner and my experience with the school board, I mean, I got into those right as COVID kicked off, and just the atrocious overreach from the government on what we had to do was just insane. And I'm not somebody that can continue to sit back and complain about things without trying to do something about it.
Mm-hmm. And what separates you from your opponent, Eric Sorensen? He is the incumbent, and you're going up against him. So what's the big difference between you and your opponent?
Well, for two things, I wouldn't have voted against HB 28, which allowed boys to play in women's sports and go into their locker rooms like he did. I also wouldn't have voted against a big, beautiful bill that went against no tax on tips and no tax on overtime. It solidified Trump's first term tax cuts. I mean, he went against all of that. Also, the biggest thing that separates myself from Eric Sorensen is I've signed the bottom right-hand corner of a paycheck. I know what it takes to run a business and to, be physically responsible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. And, I think Eric Sorensen has spent a lot of his time these recent weeks defending public media, and those people definitely haven't signed at the bottom of a paycheck because they're constantly getting tax dollars, right? So, and he spent a lot of time defending media. One of the biggest things that bother me about Eric Sorensen, and I don't like to talk too much smack, but one of the biggest things that bother me, Dylan, it's the constant, I was a meteorologist. I'm a broadcaster. I know. I hate the whole a business owner, somebody who actually provides jobs, lots of them. I mean, you have coffee shops all over Illinois, and you're in another state as well, right?
Iowa. Yeah.
And that's actually, help. And I'm not saying ripping on meteorologists, but it's the constant, because I'm a meteorologist, I'm the authority on this thing. And that's what makes it so frustrating, for me as a constituent.
It just baffles me. And he's on the farm committee as well. I would love to see Eric jump into a John Deere tractor and try to start the thing first off. But for you to be the one voting on what's best for our farmers when you know nothing about it. I've had my own cattle farm. I've put seed in the ground. I know what it's like to work and operate on a farm. It's the qualification that you're a meteorologist for 15 or 20 years. I don't get it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for us today. I appreciate you, Dylan, joining the show. Where do we go to donate to find out more about your campaign?
Yeah, go to Vancil, VANCIL for Congress.com. You can find some more of my information on there. You can also contribute to our cause. We are going to win this seat in the 17th. It is the pickup seat in Illinois to help Trump in 2026. The momentum is there. We're just going to keep the ball rolling. It's getting to be petition season now, so we'll be out collecting signatures. And I have no primary opponent on the Republican side, where Eric Sorensen actually does have a primary opponent up in the Rockford area. So, yeah, we're just going to keep the momentum going. People in Illinois are tired of being taxed to death. I really think JB Pritzker must have a share in U-Haul, because I'm sure business is booming for U-Haul company in Illinois. We have to put a stop to that.
Oh, yeah. Well, Dylan, thank you so much for joining me here on the show, folks. Thanks for listening. Protect your land, know your rights, and always remember vancil4congress.com to go check out, see what he's got going on the campaign, and never, ever, ever let them call theft progress. Okay. The thievery that's going on your property via eminent domain, don't let them call that progress. God bless, and I'll talk to you. All right, folks. That was our interview that featured Dylan Vancil. He's running in the Illinois 17th. I'll get to a few of your comments, and then I do want to explain again the differences between the Illinois Connector 3 and the Southwest Connector that we talked about extensively in that interview. It is just one of those, the Illinois Connector 3 is one of those things, file it under, watch what they do. Okay, don't listen to what they say, watch what they do. And the Southwest Connector is doomed from the very beginning. I mean, they're funding it $6 million just to study it. And I think that they're never going to break ground on it, much like the Illinois Highway 34. This is one of the deadliest highways in Illinois, and yet they have not expanded it to a 4-lane highway. And they continue to ignore that. Let's get to some of these comments. I'm a meteorologist reminds me of Congresswoman Lauren Underwood constantly saying, as a nurse, when she's actually an administrative nurse. I didn't know that about Lauren Underwood, but yeah, a lot of these Democrats, they'll tend to do these appeal to authority type arguments, and they'll say, well, I'm a nurse or I'm a meteorologist. And I never hear Republicans doing that kind of stuff. Okay. And my issue is you speak from a moral authority on all kinds of issues just because you're a nurse or a meteorologist. Conservatives would rather give a historic tax cut to the rich, expand corporate welfare, and add trillions to our debt than fund Medicaid and SNAP. Farmers love SNAP. Okay, a few things that you actually have got right there. I do think that a lot of these corporate type farmers, these big farmers, mega farmers, they love SNAP. Of course they would love SNAP. So I'm sure when you go into it's big food. Okay. They love making money. Okay. Some of these farmers, corn farmers, corn syrup. If you go into your pantry, you pull out anything, you're going to see corn syrup. You're going to see corn flour, soy. Okay. It's in everything. Okay. One, there's no reason for it to be in everything. It's terrible for you. But big pharma, big food, they're connected. And, where Maha movement has talked about this a lot, how we should be combating against or fighting against all of these extra ingredients being in our food. Really, it's just to make people rich, these mega corporations and these mega farmers. So SNAP is, we would rather give historic tax cuts to the rich and expand corporate welfare. Let me talk about this a quick second. SNAP is corporate welfare. Okay. SNAP is benefiting Walmart. So if you look at places like Walmart, wherever you get your groceries, Jewel Osco, I mean, I could type it in here really quick. Billions of dollars is what Walmart makes on SNAP. Okay. So this is actually making sure that SNAP is not being abused and that there's no fraud or waste in that system. It is actually going against the corporate elitist. Okay. Because if we take the money out of that system, we're taking the money out of the corporate elitist pockets. If we say things like, hey, SNAP, because SNAP, for years, Republicans and true conservatives have pushed for SNAP to not extend to high fructose corn syrup products, pop. Okay, for years, conservatives have tried to get pop off of SNAP, and there's been big pushback to that. And I'll tell you who pushes back against that. It's the farmers. So they're all connected. Everybody's making a ton of money off of this program. And, you know, it's unfortunate. A lot of libs, I'm assuming like yourself, will say things like, oh, these dirty, evil Republicans, how dare they take food out of the mouths of poor people? Well, actually, the SNAP program is super bad for poor people and really beneficial for the corporate elitists who are running Walmart, okay? And for the mega farmers who love the SNAP program because they can continue to feed a bunch of high fructose corn syrup to poor people who ultimately get fat and die, you know, and get sick. So you'll see, you know, amongst the poor populations, they have terrible diets, and it's because they have these SNAP programs, and SNAP doesn't restrict things like pop or some of these the junk food, okay? SNAP should really be only for produce and the deli, produce and meat products. That is what my position is. If we are going to continue to use SNAP, really SNAP is anti-Christian. Christians should be stepping up, and they do in churches across the country, across the state, and even in my own community. Like I can't throw a rock without hitting a church that has a food pantry open on a given day. Okay, so we should be fleeing to our churches and leaning on our churches rather than the government and being dependent on the government. And the government loves the SNAP program because everybody's getting rich and the poor keeps getting sick, and they are forever dependent on this program. Okay, so if we really care about these vulnerable citizens, we would get them off of that program, and we would give a big old FU, which Donald Trump is doing by saying, hey, there needs to be work requirements, there needs to be SNAP error rate requirements. You can't have an error rate and overpayments in SNAP. You have to actually be eligible for the program. This is a big middle finger to corporations and mega farmers who profit off of the illness and the vulnerability of poor people. So yeah, SNAP benefits vulnerable citizens and all farmers, big and small. No, that is just false. I mean, I don't know how else to tell you. SNAP, the big farmers who are pushing out corn and soy to the tune of billions and billions and tons of product, that it's benefiting the mega farmer and the corporations like Walmart because they're making billions of dollars. I don't know how much. Let me look it up. How much did Walmart make last year on SNAP? Okay. And you're going to see once you hear this number, Walmart captured approximately 25 to 26% of all SNAP grocery dollars in a 12-month period, July 31st through 2024, ending July 31st, 2024, so fiscal year 2024. So we're looking at that 25% of $100 billion. That's $25 billion Walmart made on poor people. Okay, that SNAP is 100% only benefiting the top folks. I mean, they made $25 billion off of it. It is a corporate subsidy disguised as charity. Okay, that is what SNAP is. It's just a corporate subsidy. And who makes all of the food that they're buying? It's the big farmers, the people who... We're not talking about your local farmers, the people who sell it right there on your farm, your small farm. We're talking about the people who send barrels upon barrels, tons upon tons of food or soy and corn to these processing facilities like ADM, where then they turn it into crap. Okay, they process it down, rip out all of the nutrients, and then they put it in your sugary snacks. They put it in your corn chips. And then all of these poor people wind up becoming big pharma guinea pigs and clients of big pharma because they're so sick of eating all of the crap. So yeah, I mean, I Google does benefit small farmers. Dude, I don't need to Google it because I see it. Okay, look on the back of your food. You're going to see high fructose corn syrup. You're going to see soy oils, canola oils. All of that is processed stuff. Okay, and I know how this works. A small farmer, it goes from farm to table. Okay, from farm to store to table, like a local store. I have a local meat market right here in my town. I know where the cow farm is at. They process it in-house, and then they sell it out of the grocery store. Typically, they'll sell them right here out of the IGA, and then they've got the label there, and you can go and visit the farm. Okay, now, when you're looking at your food products, there's things in there like corn syrup or corn flour or soybean oil. All of that stuff is not processed. Why? Because you would literally die trying to process it without hazmat. You need a processing facility like ADM or in Cabrasa or multiple food processing facilities across the nation in order to process that stuff. Okay. And they don't work with small farmers, those big time processors. Okay. That's not to their benefit, and small farmers don't work with those types of processors. Okay. So, I mean, there is no argument here. SNAP only benefits the corporate elitists and these big farmers like that just want to see green, and don't care how many people die at the expense of them getting rich. Okay, that's not true farming when you sell out to these big food processors. True farming is from farm to table. People can visit your farm and purchase either the meat or the corn or the soy that you're actually selling. Okay, let's shift gears. I gotta shift gears here because otherwise I'm gonna start to get really peeved off. Let's get to the homelessness issue. There is a new study. Turns out it's not the housing crisis because Republicans are so evil and capitalism is cruel and yada, yada, yada. And Republicans don't care about the downtrodden or the people who are down on their luck. It turns out it's not any of that. It turns out that it's not because we're not throwing enough money at the problem of homelessness. This new study, done, by the way, by not conservatives, the University of Chicago and Dartmouth College. These are not exactly institutions known as conservative bastions, okay? It turns out that many of these cities that are hardest hit by homelessness, the devastation of homelessness actually comes from failed policies, specifically immigration policies, open border policies. That's where the homelessness crisis starts to happen. Okay, so Governor J.B. Pritzker, Gavin Newsom, the mainstream media, they're not telling you the truth. They didn't share this study that was done by University of Chicago and Dartmouth College. This was done actually in April. But I, of course, don't remember CNN, MSNBC, New York Times reporting on this study or any other liberal outlet reporting on it. Because here's what the paper is titled. The paper is titled Asylum Seekers and the Rise of Homelessness. And this is getting attention now. And really all you need to know about this article or about this study is the abstract of the data and of the study. Here's what the abstract says. Data from the Department of Housing and Urban Development indicate an unprecedented 43% increase in the number of people residing in homeless shelters. So they didn't take a look at people just residing in the streets. They looked at people who are in homeless shelter in the United States between 2022 and 2024. So the last couple of years, there has been a 43% increase in homelessness overall in the United States. 3/4 of this rise was concentrated in 4 localities: New York City, Chicago, Massachusetts, and Denver, where large inflows of new immigrants seeking asylum were housed in emergency shelters. Using direct estimates from local government sources and indirect methods based on demographic changes, we estimate that asylum seekers accounted for 60% of the 43% of the 2-year rise in sheltered homelessness during this period. During this time period, 2022 to 2024. Challenging media and policy narratives that primarily attribute this rise to local economic conditions and housing affordability. So a lot of times you'll hear Democrats saying, we have a housing crisis. We don't have enough houses being built because of the dirty capitalists, right? We need to change our zoning laws. We need more multifamily housing, which again, most Democrats are pro-corporation, like I was arguing about with this leftist here in the comment section. Democrats are pro-corporation. They just tend to hide it through charity or through buzzwords, okay, bureaucratic buzzwords. They're actually pro-corporation. They want the multifamily housing. Why? Because companies like BlackRock can come in and build these huge, giant apartment buildings that they actually wind up charging $2,000 a month for in rent. So it's not actually affordable. And the people who are getting rich are these mega corporations like BlackRock who come in and build this. So God forbid we build a single family house where people actually want a couple of bedrooms and a couple of bathrooms for their kids. God forbid we do that. And those dirty, dirty capitalists, how could they? You know, they aren't building the multifamily housing like they should. Okay, so a lot of these local people say that we're in a housing crisis, and they attribute the homelessness issue to housing affordability. So this is pretty stunning, this study, and it's something that critics of Joe Biden's let them all in border policies. That was his open border policies, and critics of those policies and the progressive mayors in sanctuary cities, your Brandon Johnsons, they have policies, that have led to madness. We, as critics of those policies and of critics of these sanctuary cities and states, we have known this for some time now. Okay, that the homelessness issue is definitely something to do with the asylum seeker, the illegal immigration issue. And it's not helping the homelessness issue. There's no supply because there's such a demand because you flooded these areas. The study shows that it's concentrated in these areas like Chicago, like New York City. And, these numbers aren't really shocking to me. They're probably not really shocking to you. I mean, it's nice to see them on paper. And it's nice to see not necessarily these conservative outlets or these conservative institutions doing this type of study. These are liberal institutions. University of Chicago is saying the homelessness crisis is attributed to the illegal immigration issue. Okay, so let's note that the numbers the researchers provided here only describe sheltered homelessness. Now, the number of homeless people who are in the streets have also risen. If you live in a major city, anybody with two eyes can see that homelessness in the streets has risen. Anybody who lives in a major city can tell you that. Now, Savannah Hernandez, she was in just a few months ago, she was in New York City reporting on the homelessness issue, the illegal immigration issue. She was there, and 3 months ago, they had 65,000 illegals in New York City. Now, fast forward to today, now they're saying 93,000 illegals, okay? So this is a clip. Now, this was in 2023. Okay, so August of 2023, so 3 months ago, before August, there was 60. So this was the height of President Joe Biden's open border policies. This is where it was getting really, really bad. So in 3 months' time, it jumped from 65,000 illegals 3 months before August. So that was August, July, June. Yeah, so sometime in June of 2023, they were at 65,000 illegals in New York City. And then fast forward to August, they had 93,000. Okay. Now, that time, they were estimating spending $4.2 billion on housing these illegal immigrants. Okay. So the year prior to that, in 2022, still under Joe Biden, they had spent $1 billion. So in 2023, they were estimating $4.2 billion that they were going to have to spend to house these illegals. This was the report from Savannah Hernandez back in 2023. Take a listen. Okay, so I wanted to show you this just to show you the gravity of the situation that was in 2023 and 2022. Now, one of the researchers in this study, this is a not conservative study. He is the University of Chicago's Bruce Meyer. He said that Trump's border policy should help ease this disaster that has been created by Democrats. Substantially more than half of the increase in homelessness comes from migration rather than new individuals falling into poverty. Okay, so this is not new individuals falling into poverty. This isn't even housing affordability. What's really going on is the homelessness issue is spiking within the years of 2022 to 2024 because of migration, there's open border policies. Here's what he says. He goes on in the study. He says federal immigration policy changes under the Trump administration that narrow pathways to asylum are likely to slow the growth of sheltered homelessness in the years ahead. Like I said, the study only looked at sheltered homelessness, not on the street homelessness. This looks more like on the street homelessness. Maybe they're outside of shelter there in the Savannah Hernandez report, but according to a count, in 2024, there were over 771,000 people who were homeless in the United States on any given night, with the biggest numbers being in New York and California, two sanctuary states, soft on crime laws, progressive governors, okay? So 10 states with the most homeless population. Here we go. I'm going to ramble them off. California, 181,000 people who are homeless on any given night. New York, 103,200. Florida, it jumps way down. So this goes to show you the sanctuary states, California and New York. There's something going on because it jumps way down in Florida to 30,000. That's a big jump from New York, 100,000, over 100,000 to 30,000 in Florida. There's something going on. It's clearly their sanctuary state status. So we know why these numbers have exploded. It's thanks to governors like Governor J.B. Pritzker, Gavin Newsom, Governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, and of course, from former President Joe Biden and all their progressive friends, okay? They're the reason why homelessness is so bad, and nobody wants to talk about that. They want to keep saying it's a housing crisis and that there's not enough houses. No, there's a ton of people who are now homeless because there was a huge open border policy. There was a big hole in our border, and now there's a ton of people here who are sheltered or who are now homeless, and they're in our homeless shelters. That's why the numbers have spiked. So we knew this, but now we have the numbers to prove it, and we have a study to point to, and it's not a conservative study. This is a University of Chicago and Dartmouth College study. Okay, not exactly your conservative institutions. Okay, let me get to some of your comments. This is interesting. Dems are pro-corporation. Yep. Republicans cut taxes on the rich, increase corporate welfare, and add trillions to our debt. It's the Dems that want higher taxes on corporations. It's the Dems that want higher taxes on corporations and the rich. That's not true. And I don't know what state you live in, but I live here in the state of Illinois, and I can tell you right now, Governor J.B. Pritzker, we have some of the highest corporate income taxes in the state, which aren't necessarily good, okay? Which aren't good. I'm just going to say it. They're not good because ultimately what winds up happening is those taxes are passed on to the working class folks, okay? Taxing these companies is not the answer, but Governor J.B. Pritzker, despite having the highest corporate income taxes, so yes, sometimes Democrats do have really high taxes on corporations, but guess what they turn around and then do? They provide tax breaks to their friends only. Okay, so they blanket high corporate taxes or high taxes on these corporations, but then they pick and choose their buddies and who they want to succeed. Okay, so for example, Governor J.B. Pritzker gives all kinds of tax credits to tech companies, specifically some startup tech companies who have not really proven themselves worthy of a tax credit. They'll get tax credits to the tune of billions of dollars. A few off the top of my head. There's quantum computing companies. There's Rivian. There's quantum computing companies that have set up shop in Chicago. A lot of these green energy type companies, that is something that Governor J.B. Pritzker is very passionate about and has a lot of friends in. So he provides tax credits. So that is a break for mega corporations, for these massive tech companies who haven't even really proven themselves and proven that they're worthy of a tax credit. Okay, so the Dems do it too, all of the time, where they provide tax breaks to. Now, what Republicans do, they'll provide tax breaks not just to the corporations, but also to the working class. For example, the BBB, you saw no tax on tips. You saw no tax on overtime. That was a very specific, hey, we're cutting taxes for corporations, which ultimately is going to be a tax cut for the working class because it trickles down. There's this trickle down effect that it has, because it's always really good for the working class, because if a company is not paying so much in taxes, then they're going to be able to afford more workers, okay, hire more workers. So if you cut at the top, it does have this trickle down effect. But Donald Trump is different than that of any other Republican. I will give you that. Some Republicans just stop there and they cut the taxes at the top, which I am not vehemently opposed to, because like I said, there's this trickle down effect. It does wind up helping the working class. But what Donald Trump has done, he also not only cut taxes at the top, but he also cut taxes for regular folk, okay, regular working class people. So he's different in that sense than your traditional Republican. Now, what the left does is especially evil because they tax everybody an insane amount. So we pay the highest property taxes. There's the highest corporate income taxes. Here in the state of Illinois, we pay very high cell phone taxes. We have the highest cell phone tax in the nation. I think one of the highest. It's at 38%. So $38 of your $100 phone bill is just straight taxes. And that goes directly into the pockets of the state agencies and the public sector folks. Okay, because where do your taxes go? It goes to them to provide government services. And a lot of times, I don't think you disagree with me, those government services suck. Have you ever gone to the DMV? Okay. So they funnel money all to their friends. That is what's especially evil about the left, because they do blanket taxes for everybody, and then they pick and choose who they want to win, or who they want to give tax breaks to. So they eliminate competition totally. Republicans are of the belief, why don't we just cut taxes for everybody, or cut taxes for everybody at the top? And then there will be this trickle down effect. Donald Trump believes, let's cut taxes for everybody, top, middle, and bottom. And then we can actually have a free market economy. And I'll tell you the difference between the two parties. The major difference is people who want to work and want to participate in something we call the free market, and people who don't want to work, and people who want to pick winners and pick their friends and pick winners and losers. And that's called socialism. That's not everybody participating in what we call the free market. That's picking and choosing who gets a leg up and who doesn't. And they call it equity. I call it socialism. Okay, so yes, Democrats are pro-corporation. Far more actually worse than I would argue than Republicans who are pro-corporation, but in a much different way, in that it's fair because they cut taxes for everybody at the top. Okay, whereas here they tax everybody, but then they pick and choose who they want to win, and that's not fair. That's called communism, socialism. So let's look at this. Why isn't Trump draining the swamp? Draining the swamp doesn't happen overnight. You have to have hard evidence of wrongdoing. The DOJ is working on it. Usually California, New York, they always lead in the bad categories. Working class voters put Trump into the White House last fall. Exactly. Bad thing in the BBB, yeah, raising the SALT deductions. We've talked about that before. The SALT deductions, there were multiple bad things in the BBB. There was something in there as well that I didn't like about they zeroed out this tax on silencers, and you might be like, oh, they zeroed out a tax cut on silencers, these gun. And I don't even really like to call them silencers because they don't really silence anything. They just kind of suppress the noise. They're protective equipment. But they zeroed out this tax to $0. It used to be $200, but they're still like a gun registry almost for your suppressors and your like short barrel rifles. So it's just annoying. But the SALT deductions are also really bad because ultimately what the SALT deductions do, they help your what do I call them? Your white rich people in Chicago and blue states. Those are the people who are essentially going to get tax cuts. It's not even people in red states who are going to be getting those tax cuts. They're wealthy people in blue states specifically who are going to be getting tax cuts through the SALT deduction. We've talked about that. I'll pull that story up and I'll talk about it more. But earlier in the show, I want to make sure that I make this clarification. We talked about the Southwest Connector and the Illinois Connector 3. So there is a big difference between the two. This one is 70 miles. So let's take a look at this. This is the Southwest Connector. It goes from southern type towns here, Murfreesboro, and it goes all the way to Waterloo, right here in the St. Louis Metro East area. So this is the Southwest Connector. And I have no idea how much that's ultimately going to cost. We know now that it's costed $6 million just to study and get feedback from people if they actually want it, which seems a little bit ridiculous. We probably should have done some studies that didn't cost so much in taxpayer dollars, or get the feedback before we dumped so much money into it already to plan for it. But that is the Southwest Connector. And then I do want to share this one with you. This is this yellow part right here. It cuts through a facility. You can actually see it right here. This is called the Illinois 3 Connector. Okay. So the Illinois 3 Connector is only about 2 miles. Okay. And it connects the Illinois Route 203 and Illinois Route 3. Okay. And it connects the two, and it goes right through this facility here that we were talking about with Dylan Vancil. This was a family-owned facility. So it was a trucking company, and it cut right through via eminent domain. They were going to have to use eminent domain. Of course, it's going to hurt the people there and the jobs and things like that. But of course, the people who pushed for the Illinois Route 3 Connector, they wanted, and this is in St. Clair County, they wanted to push this Illinois Route 3 Connector in the name of jobs and economic impact. They said that this was going to help traffic. You know, it's at 2 miles, and it costed $80 million, this project right here. So we brought up these two projects because this is one of those projects, the Illinois Route 3 Connector. This is one of those projects where you have to file it under pay attention, because when you look at bigger projects like this one, this is a 70-mile project. When you look at bigger projects like this one, think about what they did just with the 1.8 miles, with the 2 miles. They cut through a major facility, family-owned business. Could you imagine what 70 miles is going to do? Could you imagine what they're going to do with this project? And, you know, we talked about Illinois Highway 34. This is one of the deadliest highways. They haven't expanded that highway for decades. The locals have been pushing for that highway to be expanded because of the fatalities that happen. They haven't touched it. So this just goes to show you the lack of priorities and the poor project management that's been going on at a state level with some of these projects. Now, I do want to share this one with you. We talked about this as well. This is the Grain Belt Energy transmission line. Okay, so it was going to take green energy, wind energy from Kansas across Missouri into Illinois before hooking up to a power grid in Indiana. Okay, so the Grain Belt Express planned to bring as much as 25,000 megawatts of power to Missouri. Okay, from Kansas to Missouri, and it was going to bring some power to Illinois. This has been canceled. $4.5 billion was totally canceled from this project under the Trump administration. A big win because this transmission line right here in Illinois, you can see it right underneath Springfield there. This transmission line would have resulted in a ton of rural people having to give up their land via land deals or eminent domain. Okay, so I ran through some of that. I do have to take a quick break. Quick take. Eminent domain and quick take. Lives in Murfreesboro on the Southwest Connector. Yeah. Well, so you brought it up earlier. There was this guy, and I don't know too much about this fella. He apparently lived, he and his wife lived, and he was the House Speaker of Illinois. You brought up his name earlier. I'm going to have to go look at it now. I forget his name now. I'll have to go check that out. But there was an Illinois Republican who actually was caught in some backlash and some fire for this because he lived where some of this land deals were going to happen for a highway. And yeah, Denny, there you go. Thank you. Denny Hastert. So he and his wife lived where this highway was supposed to happen, and they were supposed to secure federal fundings, and they were going to get like millions of dollars in this land deal. And he was accused really of bringing forward the project and advocating for the project and pushing for it because he wanted the land deal to go through. So Mike Boss lives in Murfreesboro. I don't know what his land situation looks like, and not accusing Mike Boss of that. But a lot of times what you'll see is some of the people who push for these types of projects, they have something to benefit from these projects, or they will benefit from these projects. Now, Danny Hastert, he was I think he was a speaker at some point, a House Speaker, and he was accused of essentially trying to push this deal through so that way he could get a comfy little land deal. All right, I'm going to take a quick break, but we're going to come back, and there is another story when I hit today. Oh, the New York City shooting. I got to cover that because, as usual, like Pavlov's dog, they heard the word mass shooting, they heard the word AR-15, and they started to salivate the mainstream media. And they started to say, oh, we need stricter gun laws. This happened in New York City, by the way, in a no-gun zone. And they want more gun control laws. We have hundreds of gun laws here in the state of Illinois, but in New York City definitely. We don't need any more gun control. We need more idiot control. That is what Senator Kennedy said. So we're going to get to this shooting. It was tragic because a lot of people died. I think it was like 5. I'll get to the numbers here. I'll make sure I give you the right numbers. 4 people are dead because of this shooting. And you've got Senator Roland Gutierrez, I don't know. He is one of those types of people where I think that he makes me want to have intelligence tests for people seeking elected office. He says that the reason why these 4 people are dead are because of, quote, loose and reckless gun laws in our country that let anybody purchase weapons of war to inflict mass carnage. New York has some of the most restrictive gun laws on the books. And they even jailed this guy, and I'll get to this. His name is Dexter Taylor, and he was building guns in his own house as a hobby, and they jailed this guy. So they've really cracked down on guns in New York City. So I don't know what the hell these people are talking about, that, more gun control is going to prevent a tragedy like this. Probably not. It probably is the reason why a gun tragedy happened like this, because nobody could take down the shooter because nobody was armed. This was a gun-free zone, and they tend to gravitate to those zones in order to wreak havoc. So I'll be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat. morning. Smash that like button. Share this out with your friends. I so do appreciate you being here. We are going to get to this shooter. So the usual suspects, of course, are out there crying about the NYPD shooting or the NYPD shooting. So there were officers who were shot, but it was in a gun restricted zone. Their cries are ringing hollow. This is, to be expected. There was actually an officer died. So I said 4 dead. There was actually 5 dead. The numbers, especially with this being so new, it's tough because this was in a Monday shooting. Senator John Kennedy predicted the response here, okay, after the tragic shooting in New York, which left 5 dead, including an NYPD officer. He said, and I quote, I'm quoting Senator John Kennedy, on Capitol Hill, probably beginning in the morning, Tuesday, there will be an inevitable call by some of my colleagues for more gun control laws. We have hundreds of gun control laws. We don't need any more gun control. We need more idiot control, and I don't know how exactly we do that. Neither do we, Senator. We have no idea how we control these idiots. But right now, the idiots that need to be controlled are the ones that cannot seem to get it through their thick skulls that more gun control doesn't result in less crime. The criminals aren't going to check the gun control laws or check the laws before they go out and commit crimes, okay? So they were, of course, the mainstream media salivating, and you're probably not going to hear much about this story because the guy actually happened to be darker skinned, darker complected. You tend not to hear about these stories unless it's a white guy. So, of course, CNN, they identified the shooter as possibly white. He is not white. He looks, I don't know, maybe like brown Muslim-ish, but definitely not white. And CNN, they are facing backlash now because they reported it as a possibly white guy. AR-15 mass shooting, they're hoping it's a white guy, right? It's just how sick the mainstream media is. Anything that they can do to exploit a tragedy for their political agendas, they'll do it. Senator Roland Gertiez, I don't know. He's a congressman or a senator, a U.S. senator, and he wrote this on social media. He said, 4 people. There are 5 people now who are dead. Because of the loose and reckless gun laws in our country, where anybody can purchase a weapon of war. So let's look at this. This was a gun-free zone. I'll show you the video here. Here we go. The senator shared this video on his timeline, and he said, that looks like people are responding to the incident. This was in a gun-free zone, this building here. So, New York has some of the strongest gun laws on the books, okay? Like I said before we took the break, they even jailed this guy. His name is Dexter Taylor. It was a very national story. He was at home and he, builds his own guns. They call them ghost guns. Ghost guns. Really what he's doing, he's just building his own guns at home. This was a hobby, and they jailed this guy. He shouldn't have been jailed. He was targeted. And he was a black guy. So I think he was specifically targeted because he's a Black 2A supporter. And he just happened to be pro-Second Amendment, and they didn't like that. So they targeted him, and they jailed him for simply building guns as a hobby in his home. Like I said, this was a gun-free zone. And I think that this is interesting because the reported shooter, his name is Shane Tamura. Somebody like this reported shooter is not going to care to follow the gun laws that you write. Okay, just bottom line. The AR-15 that the Shane guy, the reported shooter, had used to carry out these horrible murders. These are truly horrific. This AR-15 is actually illegal in the state of New York. Okay, the entire state. There are actually 11 states that I believe have banned AR-15s and other guns that are like AR-15 like, Illinois being one of them. It has been banned since Andrew Cuomo signed the SAFE Act into law in 2013. So AR-15s have been banned for quite some time in New York since 2013, but apparently Shane, this reported shooter, didn't get the memo. It's been multiple years at this point, 10 years, 11, 12 years since this law went into effect. Apparently he didn't care to read the law. That shouldn't come as a shock to us. Current New York Governor Kathy Hochul, she posted on the government's website, okay, on the New York website, how restrictive the state's gun laws actually are. And this is New York Democrat Richie Torres. He says, I find it absolutely insane that we allow weapons of war to flow freely on the streets of America, even though the city in which he represents, he's a New York Democrat, has had the strictest gun laws in the nation really since 2013. Okay. He came out and he said this. I'll share it with you. Here we go on CNN.
And I find it to be absolute insanity that we allow weapons of war to just flow freely on the streets of America. And even though New York State and New York City have the strictest gun laws in the nation, those gun laws can only take you so far if guns can easily cross state boundaries. And this is exactly what happened here.
And in New York, is your understanding that it would have been easy for him to obtain this AR-15 weapon if he purchased it here?
I think it would have been easier for him to obtain it in Nevada. I mean, we have much stricter gun laws here in New York.
Yeah.
But again, what we desperately need is a national ban on military-style weapons, because we have far too many guns in America, far too few regulations of those guns. And I find it to be...
Okay. So this guy really doesn't know anything that he's talking about, because like I said, and since 2013 in his state, there has been a ban on military-style weapons. Okay. And Governor Kathy Hochul has posted on the government website about how restrictive, of course, the gun laws are in that state. I'll share with you what the website looks like. Take a look. Here it is, the New York website, gun safety in New York. And here she is, ensuring responsible gun ownership. Governor Kathy Hochul's top priority is New Yorkers' safety, or keeping New York safe. Yeah, That's why people burn alive on your subways. That's why, because safety is your number one priority, lady. So we had the New York Democrat Richie Torres coming out saying that, but we also have the other usual suspects. You have Jerry Nadler, had no answer as to why criminals don't follow these laws that have been around since 2013 in the case of New York. Okay, he bemoaned that there was an epidemic of gun violence because it's easy to access these guns. It's so easy to access these weapons of war. Here's what Representative Nadler said on X. He said, gun violence in this country is an epidemic. The tragic loss of a brave police officer and innocent civilians is far too common. I want to make sure I clarify something. So 5 people are dead, including the shooters. So 4 people, I was right. That's why it's so tough, because we never used to report it this way. And they started to include the shooter in the reports of those dead. So it really confuses me. The mainstream media starts to include those in the death count. They never used to be included in the death count, but technically 5 people died. I don't like counting the shooter. So there were 4 people, including a police officer who died. And then a 5th person died by suicide. It was the gunman. Okay. He says, from Columbine to Sandy Hook, from the Tree of Life Synagogue to Pulse nightclub, from Charleston to today's shooting in Midtown Manhattan, we must, says Jerry Nadler, put an end to the easy access to weapons of war that continue to take endless lives. That's what he says, as if these weapons of war get up and start shooting people. No, people kill people. Guns don't kill people. So riddle me this, Representative Nadler, please. There was a criminal in Michigan. This was Traverse City, and he attacked people in Walmart with a knife. Okay. And he was actually prevented from attacking people at Walmart with a knife because somebody wound up having a gun. a good guy with a gun, and the good Samaritans who were with the good guy who had a gun stopped him from attacking people in Walmart with the knife. So, which was the weapon of war? Was it the knife or was it the gun in that situation in Traverse City in Michigan? Will Nadler cry that the knife is violent and, a weapon of war? Probably not. I don't think the gun in that situation was the weapon of war. The gun in that situation, he was a good guy with a gun and he prevented loss of life in this Walmart. So I really want to know, Jerry Nadler, would you consider the knife a weapon of war, or is it just the guns in some of these mass shootings that you're going to call weapons of war? Now, I do want to talk about this British-American journalist, Mehdi Hassan. Your usual suspects, your British-American journalists, your Jerry Nadlers, your Richie Torres, your Kathy Hochul's, right? The usual suspects are crying about gun control. But here's what Hassan says. It's insane that we live in a country where folks can walk around the street with an AR-15. Okay, so if this British-American journalist on X, Hassan, had done his research before rattling off his hot take on X, he would know that folks don't just walk around in the street with an AR-15 in this country. We have varying degrees of permitting. Here in the state of Illinois, we have something called the void card. There are restrictions to carrying a firearm. You can't have, like I just talked about with the BBB, you have to register even your suppressors and your barrels with the government. Okay, so I don't know what the hell you're talking about, people. There are 11 states, like I said, who are banning and have banned AR-15s and their equivalents. Okay, so yeah, this is just ridiculous. The AR-15 didn't slaughter 4 people. The shooter slaughtered 4 people. People kill people. Guns don't kill people. All right, that's going to do it for us. I appreciate you being here today. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this out with your friends. We'll be back at it. It's a daily show, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Bye-bye. Love you.